All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's always hard to go after Carrick. It's a tough one, but yes, our friends at Sacramento County Office of Education and Red Dog did an excellent job in helping us through the carpool karaoke takes. So I think ours only took 4 or 5 times, but we got it. So here I'm pleased to be joined by Jenny Singh, who is my colleague and administrator of the Academic Accountability Unit, and who you may remember from previous years, to talk about our new accountability system. Last year, we talked about more of the methodology behind it and sort of the philosophy that the board had created, and now we actually have something tangible to talk to you about. So we have real data, we have colors, we have a lot of things going on. So we're happy to close out the long day, and I think you're going to hear a lot about how these assessments that you've been learning about today and the improvements that have been made to those assessments are now being used for accountability purposes and will mean something this fall. So with that in mind, we're going to get started on our presentation. We have several topics to cover. We're going to talk about the field tests that we've been doing and how the field test will now turn into an operational year for this fall. We will go over in depth every single one of the state indicators, as well as talking about the local indicators and the importance of completing those at the local educational agency level. Jenny will review the safety methodology, which is important for small populations, as well as what the replacement for ASAM is, our dashboard alternative school status. And then finally, we'll close out with a very high-level overview of the technical assistance that is going to occur this fall, and also the rollout of the dashboard, so our timeline for rolling out the new accountability system. So this is a nice overview of how the priority areas under the local control funding formula fit in either in a state indicator section or a local indicator section. Keep in mind the state indicators are data that we collect on a statewide basis. So it's either through our assessment system or it's through CalPADS. And then the local indicators are something that is done at the LEA level and as a self-reflection tool for each one of these. The one local indicator that I know Jenny will mention is coming on board next fall will be regarding course access. So we've had a journey this year. This year's not over yet. We have a lot of work ahead of us before our release this fall. But just as an overview, to give you a little bit of context, we opened up our system for coordinators to enroll back in January. We pilot tested, we opened it up to the public, rather we opened it up for LEA preview in February, and then we opened it up to the public in March. So we've been working on this, or we've had a public view of our new accountability system now for almost 7 months. And in rolling out the dashboard, I think the thing to keep in mind is we've been constantly making changes and adjustments in response to user feedback. So we were able to roll out the detailed reports back in April, and then in July we rolled out the local indicator functionality. And then finally, like I said, at the very end of this presentation, we'll go over the detailed dates for the actual rollout and private preview of the dashboard for the fall. In direct response to user feedback, we've already have a development site up, and we're not picking on Sweetwater, but Sweetwater did complete a narrative summary, so we wanted to give them credit for that and show this as an example. This is not currently live on the dashboard. So this is the things that are highlighted or circled in red are changes that will be made for fall. So the first one I wanted to mention is the list of all schools. And you'll see a snapshot of what that means just in a couple of slides. The other information that will be populated is foster youth. And foster youth will appear in the demographic information on every single page of that school or district's report. And then we changed the language around dashboard. It's now going to be called dashboard release. There was some confusion on the year, but this seemed to be the general consensus as this was more descriptive. There has been some questions whether or not we will keep the field test data up on the dashboard, and at this time, that is our intent, is to keep that information on the dashboard. So come fall, it'll become the fall 2017 release, and you will be able to go toggle back to the prior, the pilot. And then the reason why we picked Sweetwater, like I mentioned, is they actually completed their narrative summary. This is optional, but I would encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to give a little bit more context about your local educational agency. You only have 500 characters, so it has to be short and sweet. But Sweetwater did fill that out, and I think we've had about 150 or so other local educational agencies that have completed it as well. The other point I wanted to make about that summary is it has been shown at the bottom of the equity report, and there was very strong sentiment from the State Board of Education to move it up. So we have moved it up above the tabs for the reports, and we are hoping that that gives, again, a local context for those that wish to complete it. So the other feedback we got was it was hard to find these links to the 5x5 placement reports, otherwise known as those color grids that you see, that are actually housed on the Department of Education's website. So the other improvement that we'll make come fall with the release of the fall 2017 dashboard is we'll move up the language and the link, and we'll also provide a shortened link rather, so it should be a lot more easier to find on the status and change reports. So this is a new list of schools report, and we showed you in the first slide about the home page, it'll be right directly underneath the name of either the school or the district. This will not exist for single school districts or charter schools. Keep in mind, charter schools are considered their own LEA under LCFF. So what will happen, or what is the opportunity for districts to do, is to be able to sort by indicator performance categories for those schools. The default is going to be alphabetical order for schools, but as we add on performance categories for the other state indicators, this report will only grow, I think, in usability. We had a request at a meeting recently from counties to provide a list of all districts. So that is something that we'll put in the queue. I don't know when it will take effect, or if there's interest to do that, but that is feedback we've gotten already as a result of showing these reports off. So again, this won't be active until fall. This is a snapshot from a development site that we're using. So the other point I wanted to make sure I showed to you was that we will be populating foster youth and homeless, those student groups, in our reports. We weren't able to do it in time for the pilot or for the field test, but foster youth and homeless will be included in the student group information and reports. Now the N size for foster youth and homeless are a little different than the rest of the student groups. Under state law, we're required to report out at the LEA level for 15 students or more. We need to have a consistent N size at a school level under ESSA, and so it actually switches to 30 under ESSA. And please note for charter schools that they'll be treated as schools, not LEAs, for these two student groups. So charter schools are looking at, again, an N size of 30 for foster and homeless. Okay. So again, the state indicators are based on data that are collected at statewide level. So we're looking for consistent information across the board through CalPADS. It is something that Jenny's office calculates in addition to another office within our division, as well as folks from our data reporting office who do all of the calculations for DataQuest. So we really are working in sync to make sure that we're getting this right. So this has been a tremendous amount of work. It's been over a year in the making, and so it's exciting. But I think unlike other accountability versions of our accountability system, the one thing I want to stress before I get started with the nitty-gritty is that this system is going to take several years to develop out. So the board made several changes in September. There are a couple of changes they're going to need to consider in November. And then next year, we know that there's several things in the making. So we have a new English language development test. We'll need to figure out how to include include that in the English Learner Progress Indicator. That's just an example. But the board has, from the beginning, I think that they've said that this is going to be a work in progress. We're going to continuously improve as we need to. So that's sort of given us an opportunity to make sure that we progress at a rate in which we can keep up with, and that's why some of these things are coming on board this fall, and we weren't able to do it in spring. So where I know that we're going to have things in development, we'll mention that during each of these, the review of each of these indicators. So chronic absenteeism is one indicator that we've just barely started collecting data for. This is the first data collection this past year that was completed. We closed out that collection in late August. We're currently reviewing the data, which means that the board will need to consider in November whether or not they want to, first of all, how they want to calculate the method for this indicator, as well as whether or not it'll be reported in the dashboard, whether or not it'll be reported for status or it'll be just reported data only. Regardless of the board's decision, this data will be housed on DataQuest, so we will report out on this information. So again, we have to report on this for ESSA purposes as well. So this is really exciting data that we've never been able to collect before, so we are very interested in making sure that we get it right the first time. And so if there's issues that we find during our analysis with data quality or lack of data submission, we'll need to work through those prior to making that recommendation for November. Moving on to the suspension rate indicator. So each of these indicators, we'll talk about how it's calculated, who's included in it, what are the definitions behind it. So for suspension rate, we're looking at LEAs in schools with the N size of 30 or more students who are cumulatively enrolled. So we're not looking at census day enrollment. We're looking at any student who's walked through the door during the school year in that school or in that district. This is one of the indicators that covers all grade spans, so kindergarten through grade 12. And we're looking at both the current and prior year in all of our indicators as well, that they'll receive results for fall. Suspension rate is one that we've needed to catch up on our data, and so we will do that this fall, and I have another slide in a couple slides that'll show you the actual data years. So the cumulative enrollment, this is a bit more defined, and I give you an example here. The total number of students who at any time during the school year are enrolled in the school. So the example that is shown here is a short-term enrollment. It's 3 days. 7th, well actually maybe it's March 7th, March 8th, March 9th, and March 10th. There might have been a weekend in between too, but the kid enrolled in the school and for some reason they got suspended too. But hopefully this doesn't happen very often, but we wanted to show you an extreme example. So they would be included as part of the school's cumulative enrollment. Again, if this student left the school and went to another school and got suspended at the other school, they would again be counted as not only in the cumulative enrollment, but that suspension would count against the school as well. So we're looking at, on this slide, the calculation for status. And it says based on the number of the unduplicated number of students. And I wanted to make sure that I pointed out it's unduplicated number of suspensions. So you only, not suspensions, of students who are suspended. So if a student has been suspended more than once, they only count once. They don't count 3 or 4 times or 5 times. We do report out on this data, or rather we will be reporting out on this data on DataQuest, and we will report out on the number of students who have been suspended more than once. So that information will be available to the public, but it's not, it doesn't count against you in the accountability system. So as you can see, the formula indicates that for status, we are looking at number of students suspended divided by the cumulative enrollment multiplied by 100. And I'm going to give you just a pitch for our technical guide. These slides, I think, cover to a degree at a high level what is going on with the calculations, but the technical guide, the technical manual that we put together is really going to be a good source for you once the system comes out in fall. There is a technical guide available on our website now for the spring dashboard, which is a great resource for folks to look at. So for suspension rate, we're looking at also the calculation formula for change. And it's pretty simple, difference between current and prior year suspension rates. So for this coming year, what we're looking at is the status for 2016-17, which is the data you just barely submitted to us in the last month, minus last year, or the year prior's suspension rate for 15-16. This data is not currently available at all on DataQuest. It is something that we are trying to get out in the next month or so, but regardless, it'll be available for the dashboard. So this information will be out very shortly. And then we put in some Q&As here for common questions about the indicators that do have performance categories. So common questions around suspension rate. Do in-school suspensions count as suspensions? Yes, they do. So we're looking at in-school suspensions, and they will be included in the numerator and the calculation of the suspension rate. Another question, what impact do students who are suspended multiple times have on the calculations? And I think I went over that well, but it doesn't count against you. So a student who has been suspended once versus a student who's been suspended 4 or 5 times will count the same. It's unduplicated. All right, so I'm moving on to the graduation rate indicator. This obviously only applies to schools or school districts who have high school students. It is based on the 4-year graduation cohort. So for this coming year, we are actually looking at the class of 2016. Next year, we hope to catch up to the 2017, rather 18. So we would be able to capture the current year cohort for the first time, not only for accountability, but for reporting purposes. So we're looking at data from when they first started in 2012 and who actually graduated. So the calculation for status, students who earn a regular diploma, high school diploma, by the end of the 2015-16 school year, divided by the number of students in the 15-16 school or 4-year graduation cohort. So again, we're looking for those who've graduated with a diploma will count towards the rate. And the change, this is very different than the rest of our indicators because it's the only indicator to use the 3-year average, weighted average rather. So we're using the prior 3 years of data to create this indicator and to calculate change. So that formula is current year status minus 3-year weighted average. And then the rest of I'm going to go through this last indicator, and then Jenny's going to pick up the academic indicator and the college career indicator. But this is builds upon Tracy's presentation. So the English Learner Progress Indicator is one that takes a look at the old CELT results, but in the future, like I said, we'll take on the LPAC results. The State Board of Education did make a minor change to this indicator at their meeting in September. They added the long-term English learners who have advanced at least one level as sort of an extra credit. So I think it best is told by looking at the formula. So you can see how CELT plays a major role in the development of this indicator, which is really meant to see how students who are English learners are how they're learning the English language. So this extra credit is put in the numerator, and then you can see the division, or rather they're divided by the annual CELT test takers in the current year plus ELs who were classified in prior year. So it's a complicated formula, but it does give credit to again those districts who are able to reclassify and students who are continue to do well on these assessments. And so for LP, the common question that we created was which reclassified fluent English proficient or RFIP students are included in LP? And so we're looking at students who reclassified the prior year, and the prior year is June 1st through June 30th. We had some questions when we released the dashboard back in March because DataQuest was using census day to census day. And so we're trying to make sure that our reporting, not only with DataQuest, but with the dashboard are consistent. So that's something we'll be taking a look at and trying to align in future years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to cover the CCI and the academic indicator.
Good afternoon, everyone. And for all of you who are watching remotely, I'm not very photogenic. I promise you I look better in person. I do. So I want to thank Cindy for allowing me to do the college career indicator because that's my favorite indicator. I am excited about the CCI. And it's this for a couple of reasons, because I really truly believe that this indicator has the potential to make some huge changes of what happens in high schools around courses that are offered and how instruction is delivered. So it really was, when we were working on this, we really had the intent to design an indicator that would encourage high schools to provide all students with a rigorous, broad course of study that would lead to likely success after high school. That was the real purpose of it. We wanted it to contain both college and career data so that it would allow for fair comparisons across all schools and districts that serve high school students. There are some schools that offer a lot of CTE courses, where a lot of schools offer college prep courses. So we wanted to make sure that we could fairly compare them across. And of course, it is based on the 4-year graduation rate. So that's how we start out. Oops. So we have some measures in our CCI, and we start with a career technical education pathway completion. We have the grade 11 CASP in English Language Arts and Mathematics. We have advanced placement exams. We have the International Baccalaureate, dual enrollment, and A through G completion. So we will be reporting for the first time on the dashboard the CCI, but it's going to be status only, right? So we only have, right now we have the 2015-16 4-year cohort, the class of 2016. So those seniors who graduated in 2016 took the 2015 Smarter Balance assessment for the first time. That was the first operational test of the Smarter Balance. And so we're going to include status only. And of course, to get a color, you need both status and change. We don't have both, so we're only reporting status, and a color is going to be reported in 2018 for that dashboard. So because this is the first cohort that actually took the Smarter Balance assessments, we thought it was best to go ahead and reestablish the cut scores. So we went to the board in September, and they agreed with us, and so they indicated that they would approve the cut scores that we established. Has anyone looked at the dashboard lately that has the CCI information from the 2013-14 cohort? Okay. I would encourage you to go look at that, because that will give you an insight as to some of the data that we're going to be reporting out in the fall. So here are the cut scores that were established. You can see we have cut scores going from very high to very low. So for the fall 2017, the data we're going to be using the data from the class of 2016, reporting status only, so no color. We're going to break down the information for you. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the field saying, just telling us how we're performing based on the percent of students that were prepared and what our color is doesn't provide us with enough information to really act upon it. So we would really like you to provide additional information. So we're going to be doing that. So we're going to do reports that will show you those students who are prepared, approaching prepared, and not prepared. And we're going to provide that at the student group level also. And then for the fall of 2018, as Cindy mentioned, we are going to be caught up on all of our data. The State Board has requested that when we produce the dashboard, we use the most current data available. And so for the fall of 2018, we are going to use the most current available grad data, which means the reporting timeline is being moved up, in case you haven't made that connection. So we will be using the class of 2018 and the class of 2017. So we're skipping a year there. And we will then be reporting a color using those two classes. So we have 3 performance levels: prepared, approaching prepared, and not prepared. And if you go to this website, you can see all the criteria that we have laid out there for what you need to do, for what students need to be able to demonstrate to be prepared and approaching prepared. One important factor here is that when we look at the cohort, we actually take out those students who participated in the California alternate assessment. We take them out because we don't think the criteria that we currently have in the CCI appropriately evaluates these students. We are working with the commission, the advisory commission on for students with disabilities on special education on some criteria that would be more appropriate for these students. So basically the formula is we are looking at the graduates. So you cannot be prepared or approaching prepare unless you've graduated. So we're looking at the graduates. So we're taking the class of 2016, those who are graduates, and determining which ones are prepared, and then we're dividing it by the total number of students in the cohort, minus out those students that took the Cal-Alt. So here's just a sample. I mean, we are revising these reports, but we wanted to give you a picture of what kind of data we're going to be reporting on the dashboard that might be helpful to you as you do your work on the LCAP. So the first column here shows that for this particular district, they have about almost 50% of their students who are prepared. This is an unduplicated count, okay? Because you'll notice that when you look at the other columns, you'll say, well, they don't add up to this column. That is correct. They don't. Because in this particular category, students who are at the prepared level are meeting multiple criteria. So for example, in the first one for the prepared A, that's the Career Tech Plus, so it's completing a CTE plus A through G or dual enrollment. So you have the percent there. And then you move to the Smarter Balanced level 3. And then you can see that there's a lot of students who meet the prepared E, which is A through G plus. So A through G plus completing a CTE or dual enrollment or AP, something like that. So we'll do the same report for those students who are approaching prepared. Again, the far left column will show it's an unduplicated count. And here you can see, though, there's some duplication. There's not a lot of duplication. Well, that's because if there had been a lot of duplication, they would have been prepared. So you can see that it's a little bit different for this group. So some common questions. Now we're asking, we're putting these common questions down because we get these questions a lot and we want to share the answers with you, but we're going to see if you're paying attention. I don't want to see these questions coming up to us. If it does, you're going to get a red. So we're starting off with which courses count for dual enrollment. All courses except for physical education courses. We do not count physical education courses as dual enrollment. So if a student takes a CTE course, or if they take an academic course, it will count as long as they receive college credit. It doesn't matter if they also receive credit for fulfilling their graduation requirements from high school. They can take courses that don't fulfill that requirement, they're still going to get credit. Do summer classes or night and weekend classes count for dual enrollment? Yes, as long as they receive college credit. Now, this means that you're going to have to make some changes, probably, in how you put that data in through CalPADS. So you're going to have to work with your CalPADS coordinators to do that. Some other common questions that we have, is there a set number of courses required for the CT pathway? No, there's no set number. However, the pathway must consist of 300 hours. This is a Perkins requirement, and that we've incorporated into our accountability system. The Perkins also requires that a student must complete the capstone course with a C or better. So that's one of the requirements. And then people keep asking us, who provides the data on AP and IB exams? And we get those from the testing vendors. So yes, that means we are doing a soft match. We are doing a soft match, and I think we are at about a 97% match rate. So I think we're doing pretty good. I don't think it's going to get higher than that. So let's move on to the academic indicator. So the academic indicator, of course, is based on the assessments in the CAS, ELA, and mathematics, not science yet, just ELA and math. It applies to districts, schools with grades 3 through 8. Okay? The Cal-Alt will not be incorporated in the academic indicator for the fall 2017 dashboard. This was decided at the September board meeting. The board approved excluding it from the dashboard from 2017. And as Cindy had indicated earlier, we will be taking an item to the board in November in regards to the academic indicator. So even though we are not including the Cal-Alt in the academic indicator calculations, we will include them on the dashboard. We will put down the percent of students who are at levels 1, 2, and 3. And we will do that on the English Language Arts report and the math report, the same way that we are listing English learners and RFEP students separately at the bottom of the report. We're going to be adding a little report there for the students who take the Cal-Alt. So the academic indicator is based on distance from level 3. Okay. So level 3, of course, as you all know, is the standard MET achievement level on the Smarter Balance. So that means that we are doing this calculation using scale scores. And as you all know, the scale scores are different by grade and by content area. So we calculate each student's distance from level 3 separately by grade and by content area. And we are always looking at the lowest scale score that is required for level 3. So that target is different for each grade. And then we will determine an average. And that is what determines the performance level and what gets posted on the dashboard. So what we're doing is we're taking the sum of all grade 3 through 8 students, their distance from level 3 on the 2016 Smarter Balance, and dividing it by the total number of 2016 grade 3 through 8 Smarter Balance summative assessments. So as I'm reading this, I see that that's not correct. It will be 2017. So a common question here that we have for this is for the academic indicator, which student groups are included in the EL student group? And so we had quite a bit of discussion about this with the board, and we landed on including any EL student, current EL student, and any student who was reclassified within the past 4 years. So any student that was reclassified within the last 4 years will be in that group. We did this purposefully, right? Because we really feel that this is really looking at how well a school or district is doing with their EL program. And so if we take out the RFEP students, we really can't get a good sense of how well the program is working for their English learners. So, of course, our dashboard has local indicators that are really important. These are the local indicators for all LEAs and charter schools. Of course, county offices have 2 additional local indicators, but we have the 4 indicators that all LEAs must report on. So when we released the dashboard in the spring, submitting the local indicator was optional. I don't think we have a lot of districts who've actually submitted their local indicators, but that's okay because it's not optional for the fall dashboard. Everyone will have to submit, all LEAs will have to submit their local indicators, and the due date is December 1st. This is really important because if you don't submit by December 1st, and let's say you forgot and you to go on December 2nd and submit your data, too bad, so sad. You will still receive a not met for the performance indicator. That indicator will not change. And again, as Cindy mentioned earlier, we have indicated to the board, and the board has asked us to proceed to look at a new indicator, local indicator for priority 7. And of course, that is access to broad course of study. So each year, the dashboard coordinators list served is purged. Therefore, districts must resubmit the names of the coordinators for the fall dashboard release. Now, why is this important? It's important because they are the only ones who actually have access to upload the data for the local indicators. So if you don't want to get a not met, you need to have your dashboard coordinators sign up. So we're going to talk about the safety net methodology. The safety net methodology, we designed this because we received a lot of feedback about, well, really we realized that schools and districts with small student populations were over-identified in both red and blue performance levels. We got a lot of feedback from stakeholders that small populations were over-identified in red. They left out the blue. Well, that's okay, we caught it. So we we were looking at the data, and we really found that this is a big problem for the graduation rate and the suspension rate. So we developed a methodology called the safety net, which is going to help prevent large swings in results based on a few students. So when you have a small number of students, a difference of 2 or 3 students from year to year can make a huge difference in what your performance level will be. So we wanted to try to control for that. This is nothing new. We did this when we did AYP. We had ways of controlling for small N size. So this isn't anything new to an accountability system. So what we came up with, we decided that the N size that we were looking at is less than 150. This was based on some statistical analysis that our technical design group asked us to perform. And the N size is based on the indicator level. So we're looking at the indicator rather than the number of students enrolled. And this is important, especially for the graduation rate. When we're looking at the graduation rate, if you're a K-12 school and we looked at enrollment, you would probably not qualify for this indicator, even if you had only 120 or 130 students in the grad rate cohort. So that's why we're basing it on the denominator of the indicator. And then suspension, of course, will be based on the student's cumulative enrollment. So our safety net methodology actually removes the increased significantly and the decrease significantly change levels. So this is only affecting change, not status. Status remains the same. Change is the only thing that's being changed here. So small student populations will only receive one of 3 change levels: increased, maintained, or decreased. And here's what that looks like when you're looking at the 5x5 grid. It now becomes a 3x5 grid. You can still receive all 5 performance levels, all 5 colors. We're not changing that. It's just that you can't get the decline significantly and increase significantly. Moving on to our new dashboard alternative school status, or DAS. So this is the new program that we developed that replaces the Alternative Schools Accountability Model, or ASAM. I'm sure you're all familiar with ASAM. These are the schools that were these are alternative schools. So the board did approve this new system. So ASAM is no longer being referred to. It is now DAS. So schools that participate in the DAS will not receive a fall 2007 dashboard. Their data will not be included in the LEA's dashboard data either. Their data will be removed. So there are 2 ways to be eligible for DAS. One is the school is automatically identified, and the other one is the school meets the eligibility criteria. So who are the schools that are automatically qualified? Those are the schools who are identified by Ed Code: juvenile court schools, community day schools, those types of schools. And then the board has approved another set of schools, and those are district-operated special education schools. So for districts that are operating these schools, if 70% of their students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 take the Cal Alt, they will automatically be included. And a one-time only, and I do mean one-time only, for the fall 17 dashboard, we are also grandfathering in any school that applied for ASAM status between July 1st of 16 through June 30th of 2017. So they will be grandfathered in. So any other school will need to meet the criteria, which means they have to have at least 70% of their students must be comprised of high-risk students. And that criteria is posted on our DAS website. So to be approved for DAS in 2017, which means you won't get a dashboard, you must submit your application by October 6th. That's fast approaching. So if you haven't done that yet, you need to start that process. Schools approved for the DAS do not have to reapply for 3 years. So the first time they will have to reapply again will be for the fall 2020 dashboard. Now, there are some schools, alternative schools, that automatically qualify, and they may decide they don't want to participate in DAS. They may want a traditional dashboard, and that's perfectly fine. All they have to do is to submit an application, a form to us, and we will remove them from the list. They have to do this by October 6th. And of course, we have this date here because we are processing information for the November board, and so we need to be able to know which schools qualify in this category and which schools don't. Because if they are DAS schools, we need to remove them. So for the DAS schools, if they decide not to participate, they will receive a dashboard in the fall, and they're going to be held accountable to the same standards set for traditional schools, and they will be ineligible to participate in DAS for 3 years. So there is no innies and outies. It's a 3-year thing. It's a commitment. So DAS schools are going to be held accountable for meeting the same state indicators. I think there was a lot of confusion about that. They somehow thought we were, and that was partially on our fault, the way we were talking about it. It made it sound like we were going to develop an alternative accountability system, but we're not. They will be held accountable to the same state indicators. So the graduation rate, the CCI, suspension, everything that other schools are held to. However, we're going to use modified methods to calculate the results of DAS schools so that we can fairly evaluate their performance and their progress. And we are working with a task force on this. We have some really great members on the task force, and so they've been working really hard on this. So we will have this ready for the fall of 2018. So again, the modified methods, they will be the current dashboard indicators, same indicators. They'll get the same performance levels. They have 5 different performance levels, just like a regular school. And just to put this, to knock this home, we're repeating it again on the other side of the slide. It will not be different from the current dashboard. The only difference will be the type of methods that we use. So for instance, instead of a 4-year cohort rate, we may go ahead and use a 1-year rate, which is what we're talking with our task force about right now. So we may use different methodologies, but they're still going to have the same indicators. So the most common DAS questions: how do I know if my school has been approved for DAS? The automatics. Well, we have a list right on our website. Just need to click on it and find out if you're automatically approved. If you are, no worries, you don't have to do anything. And then, of course, we keep getting phone calls about what's holding up my application. Mostly because we're probably waiting for your Part 2. We have an application that's Part 1, and everyone submitted that, but in order to be complete and for us to approve it, we have to have Part 2. So just make sure that you turn in your Part 2 applications. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy.
Thanks, Jenny. Before I go over the last part of this presentation, I neglected to say in the beginning that accountability, I think like data at the department, is a collaborative effort. So I wanted to acknowledge the assessment division under Michelle's leadership, and then Jerry Winkler, my colleague in the educational data management division. We could not do what we do without those partners and without our program partners. So our English Learner Division has been very helpful, our College Career Transition Division. We talk to each other all the time. We're forced to talk to each other because we're not experts, right? So we know data, we know how to develop policy related to accountability, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty, we often are talking to Tracy and to others. And so just wanted to mention that not only do we talk to those obviously in our own building, but we get out of the building sometimes too. And for those of you that have been so grateful with your time in giving of us when you participate in our work groups, we also acknowledge that is very helpful. We always look for practitioners when we do accountability work groups, and so folks from the field, we're always looking for good partners. While I'm not soliciting any work group participants right now, we do have an active alternative accountability task force, like Jenny said. We have, on occasion, consulted with the small school districts when we created our safety net. So those are just as you think about things that are coming online, as I think about the chronic absenteeism indicator, I know that we're talking to folks about that as well. So thank you, and kudos to you all for helping us help you to create something that's fair and reliable and valid. So the other piece I wanted to make sure that you realize is that the dashboard is not just for schools that are in need of improvement. It's for everybody. It's to give the general public an understanding of how funding and how programs are doing to meet the needs of our students. And so the first phase of technical assistance is local control funding formula. It's under local control funding formula. It's not under ESSA. The first question I got right before scores let out was, where's the 5% list? There is no 5% list. We do not have ESSA in place at this time in California. But it's actually on a future slide. So we're a year away from that. But what is happening this fall is districts will be identified for technical assistance based on student group performance. I think this is very different than folks are used to doing. So we have a couple slides in here that shows you an example. So the criteria is that it must be the same student group that meets the following. We are looking at three priority areas: priority 4, priority 5, and priority 6, because those are the areas in which the dashboard has been fully built out. We have performance categories for each of these priority areas. As we have future iterations of the dashboard, you will see more of the priorities come online and a more robust system to identify based on multiple measures for technical assistance. So this particular LEA, this is the criteria, and I'm going to show you a particular LEA that we use an example on. The criteria is for priority 4, which is academic, and the English learner progress indicator. For academic, you either, from the same student group, either have a red on both English language arts assessments and mathematics, or an orange and a red on English language arts assessments and mathematics. And again, this is at the LEA level. Or a red on the English language progress indicator. Plus, you have to meet one of the following. So if you're either a high school district, you'll look at graduation rate or suspension rate. And if you're just an elementary school district, it's solely based on suspension rate. For both of those areas, it needs to be a red for that student group. So the only time orange enters into it is when we're looking at the academic indicator. So based on this criteria, this is animated. For this particular school district, Springfield, we must be in Illinois, huh? I think I know who created this one. English language arts, this school district has a red. For mathematics, they have an orange. For LP, they have a red, not an orange. And for LP, they have a red, but they have to do plus, right? So we're looking at a red in 5 or 6. So in 5, they have a yellow, and in 6, they have a green. So what does this mean? They will not be identified for technical assistance. So this is our exercise in trying to get you accustomed to how to look at the data. I can tell you the data has not been run. We do not have, we have not finished processing the academic indicator, nor the suspension information. We've just gotten in, so I have no idea how many districts will be identified at this point. That's my other common question. We will be taking to the board the academic indicator in November, and I think a question came in around that, so we can follow up with that during the Q&A. What action will the board be taking? But then just to close out this presentation, as I mentioned in the beginning of this second piece of this, for the lowest performing 5% of Title I schools under ESSA, the first time we'll be looking at technical assistance is in next fall. The board decided to wait until January 2018 when we were able to, with this third year of Smarter Balance scores, do some further data analysis and make a recommendation to them on the criteria. They are trying to base the criteria on the local control funding formula. They don't want to see two separate systems. So for those of you that have followed the board meeting, this has been a complicated decision, and it's something that in our plan, when we submitted to the federal government on September 18th, we said, we'll get back to you on this piece. So we'll see how that goes. So finally, to close out, we do have a tentative release schedule for the dashboard. We are planning on doing a rolling release of the indicators. And so right now for LEAs, for the private preview, we're looking at the first week of November, putting out the graduation rate and the college career indicator. followed by the next week of the English learner progress and suspension rate. And then that's the same week the state board meets. And by then we'll have an idea of what to expect on the chronic absenteeism and the academic indicator. So assuming things go as planned, and we'll talk about those plans, we possibly could have the whole system rolled out for LEA preview by the middle of November, prior to Thanksgiving break. At that time, we would also start to notify districts that will be identified for technical assistance. So that is something that we're talking about doing as well, and publishing a list of all school districts and how they're doing, not just on those that are on this list. So it's doing that's the current discussion that's occurring with our colleagues at the state board. And then the public release, we're looking at the week of November 27th. For those of you that are going to CERA, it would be prior to CERA, so the beginning of the week. But the end of the week, of course, Jenny mentioned, is the deadline for local indicators. So we would do a public release with knowing that the local indicators will be open through the 1st, and that is, again, the close date. So after that, we'll see all local indicators by default have something next to them. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions. This is our content information. I also encourage you to look at our website, which we didn't include on here, but you can always search under accountability on the department's webpage, and you will find us. We are a frequent, always a top 10 webpage on the department's homepage. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll start to answer some questions.